We're going to tell you who the 7 most dependable teams in the National Football League will be at the start of the 2025 season. And we'll do it here today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm the host, Tony Wiggins, of the Locked On NFL Barbershop Edition, where we come in the afternoon, laid back, and try to give you some of the biggest stories from around the National Football League. And we do it with somebody riding shotgun, a different host every day, and that is Matt Williamson, who's always here on Friday. Matt, of course, of the Peacock and Williamson podcast, and about 17 other podcasts. I can't name all of them right now because I'd run out of minutes. But Matt is also one of the founders of Locked On NFL as a show. So we love closing the week off with Matt Williamson. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the 7 most dependable teams in the National Football League as we head into the 2025 season. Segment 3, we're going to talk about how they can all screw it up individually. In the middle, why they are who they are. And at the top, I'll tell you who the 7 most dependable teams are. I have to let you know, though, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Hello to the everydayers also and the newcomers, and we'll try to give you a reason to come back. All right, Matt, at the top of the show, I said I was going to tell you why I did this, because around this time that when this show gets published, it will be Independence Day. That is the 4th of July to a lot of people, and we all love grill. We all love the food. But sometimes people watch the Food Network, man, and they get too fancy, and they mess up the food. We just want to keep it simple. Good teams keep it simple. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get hot dogs. You're going to get burgers. You're going to get links, coleslaw, baked beans, a cold drink, and something sweet to finish it off with. That is the dependability that we get on Independence Day. So happy Independence Day to you all. And now we get started with the 7 most dependable teams in the National Football League. Matty, where should I start? I'm going to let you just tell me where I'm going to start, because you know I'm going. This is not necessarily in order, but the first team I got to mention is the team that we both probably think is the most dependable.
Okay, so I have one question before we get started. I jotted down 7 teams that I think are dependable to be contenders. Like, you're not saying, boy, the Browns are dependable to go through 1 million quarterbacks because they do it every year.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got it right the first time.
Okay.
The 7 that you can count on, that they can be exactly what you think they're going to be. Now, some people do burn hot dogs. I ain't going to lie to you, but they shouldn't be grilling. But for the most part, everybody gets this right, and it's hard to screw this up. So we're going to start in Philadelphia. Check out my
super
board.
Quick, Tony.
Yeah.
They're not one of my 7 most dependable because I don't think they're one of the 7 best teams. But my Pittsburgh Steelers are about as dependable as they come in that they do the same thing every year.
You know that's right. They are consistent. Hey, baby, they are consistent 10-11 wins, right?
Right.
It's consistent. We're talking about dependable. Well, you know what? That's a good point. They are. And you know what? We're going to get to them in a second because they had a very, very eventful week, just in case you did not know. But they are my honorable mention.
Okay.
Pittsburgh is the team that if I'm going for seconds, that's who it is, right? So that's number 8. We're going to start, though, with a team right in that same state. Listen to Lou DiBiase from Locked On Eagles.
Who's a guy, though, in general that's on the rise in year 1, year 2, year 3 that I think is about to make that jump into top 5 players at his position status heading into 2025? I think it's Quinyon Mitchell. I believe he's already that kind of talent. Last year, when you look at the tape, how he just erased star receivers, it felt like week after week, was atop the league in forcing completions and pass deflections, barely gave up big plays all year, barely gave up any sort of touchdowns.
All right, Quinyon Mitchell represents the Philadelphia Eagles. They are obviously the best roster in the league. I'm glad Louis used him as his latest clip because that is also, in my opinion, their vulnerability. Not that him and Cooper DeJean aren't any good. That is not the point. The point is you can never discount the presence of Darius Slay and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who are not there anymore. Those veterans, that's over 20 years of stellar professionalism. I think the Eagles can overcome it, but I think they're the most dependable, and that's also where they're the most vulnerable.
I get it. Where I would lean towards how they could screw it up is the D-line looks like it's a little less than it's been. You know, they lost some players. History is not kind to running backs that had the Saquon workload going deep into the Super Bowl and all that. Usually the next year, unfortunately, ends up in an injury. And I just think the chances of them dominating their opponents week after week is less this year. I mean, it's hard to do that 2 years in a row. And where I'm going with this is, can they run the ball at such a high clip, or are they going to have to count more on the passing game? Remember when A.J. Brown, when things weren't going great, what's going wrong with this team? Passing. Yep. It was his only answer. So if they have to be more pass reliant, maybe they can get off the tracks a little bit, you know?
They could. And you know what? If they get into these shootouts, or they get into a situation where they're playing against a team that is pass reliant, can they guard them? Because I keep reminding people, the Rams were in the red zone knocking on the door because they were able to complete passes, because they were able to block them long enough for Stafford to get the ball out to talented receivers. Real quick, before we head out to get to segment number 2, I'm going to mention another team. It might not be in order, but here we go. What about the thing that you always know is going to be there, whether they're going to win it or not? History says they're going to at least be there. Check this out.
There's a lot of reasons why that Trey Smith doesn't have to be here. The fact that he is here, I mean, one, I think it obviously tells you what his attitude is. He wants to be in Kansas City. He wants to be around this team. He wants to be doing his job. Now, the other question is that, you know, even though both sides, the Chiefs and Trey Smith's camp, have gone radio silent as far as the negotiations go, and we really don't know where they are, other than, you know, what we've been left with, which is that, hey, something will get done this spring. There are 3 days left in spring. But I certainly get the sense that if these two sides were miles apart, Trey Smith wouldn't be in camp.
All right, I don't like teams that have vulnerable offensive lines, but the Chiefs have gone to Super Bowls twice with vulnerable offensive lines, and they didn't win, but they still been to 5 of the last 6. I think they're going to be there, but if they have one Achilles heel, in my opinion, it's their O-line.
100% agree. Obviously, all these teams, we could say injuries could derail them, especially a Mahomes injury, you know, hurts. You know, I mean, a big-time quarterback injury, I think that goes without saying. But a lot of moving parts and a bit of a leap of faith on the O-line for an offense that was not very explosive last year, you know. So I don't think their running game is A+ either, you know. So and a lot of that is O-line reflecting.
All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to mention 3 teams that have, usually we don't do 3 in one segment. We're going to do 3. And maybe the team that I kind of like the most, but they still got something that might be missing. But these are the 7 most dependable teams as we head into. And you brought up a point as we head into the 2025 season. Injuries to the quarterback are the relative thing that any team in the league, if they get it, they're in trouble. We all know that.
Sure.
So what we'll do is we'll continue to talk about dependable teams as we head into the 2025 season. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you worry about what happens if the plans change, don't worry about that, because Game Time Guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use the Locked On NFL code for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, and your redeem code is LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We rocking and rolling here on Locked On NFL. Matt Williamson joins the program as he does every Friday. We're talking about the 7 most dependable teams heading into the 2025 season. Dependable to be a contender, not dependable to be themselves, right? Because we want to do that. There's some bad teams like Cleveland's going to be Cleveland, right? But here is this player is probably the one player that we know what to expect out of him more than anybody else, even Patrick Mahomes. It's the team he plays for. Here's one of the guys that he hopes is going to improve that he can throw the ball to. Check out my man, Kevin Oestreicher.
I think this year, Zay is going to see the game slow down in ways that he didn't expect. It's going to slow down for him when it comes to releasing off the line of scrimmage. It's going to slow down for him when it's going to be a primetime game and he's going to walk away with 6 to 9 catches, 2 of them going for 30-plus yards. His red zone prowess is going to jump up even more so. He's on a better page with Lamar, and it's only going to get better.
Matt, they got to stop making this come down to one play. If you think back the last 2 years, the Mark Andrews drop was huge. He had one, he dropped it, he fumbled it. They still had a chance, and he dropped another one in the end zone that would have gotten into the championship game. People forget the year before, Zay Flowers was going in for a touchdown against the Chiefs, and he dropped the ball. He got hit, but he dropped it on the goal line. Those things have to go away if Baltimore is going to ever get past that.
I would go with, I wish they did a little more on their O-line. This is a tough team to come up with once, to be honest with you. But here's, I'm going to dig deep. I mean, to get where you want in the AFC against the Bills and Chiefs and these stud teams, you're going to play a lot of close games. And we saw this happen last year. They no longer have the best kicker I've ever seen. Like, what if they have bad kicking? They've never seen that really in Baltimore,
No, you're right. And that's one of the things. A good kicking game is, for a good team, it's that extra. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like having another reliever, a really good middle reliever. But if you're a bad team, you can have a great kicker. Like the Jaguars got a great kicker and a great punter. They won 4 games because of other stuff. right. So I agree with you, but it's look, they're so good. We're talking about a kicker. That means that they should be on this list.
Shape. Yeah.
They are in really, really good shape. Another team that's in really good shape, being in good shape was the issue last year. Not physical conditioning, but just conditioning, period, when they ended up getting a lot of guys banged up and hurt. You don't get any points for going further with 18 guys on injured reserve than anybody else in history ever has. It doesn't matter. They don't give you a trophy for that. But listen to my man, Matt Derry.
But we are so lucky to have Jared Goff as our quarterback here in Detroit. And the reason is, not only is he a winning player, not only has he led the Lions the last 3 years to winning records, playoff wins, he's made the Pro Bowl, he's been effective, great rapport with his receivers and running backs and tight ends, and signed long-term. And there are plenty of other teams that would take Jared Goff in a second. And I get it. There are people that don't think he can win the big, but we're lucky to have Jared Goff because he is a top 10 quarterback in this league.
I would almost agree with top 10, but I tell you what he is. He is the epitome. If you watch, well, I can't say the Oklahoma City because they did have the MVP, but this thing might start turning to where teams that don't have a quarterback that is an all-time legend or a Hall of Famer might eventually start winning these Super Bowls. You could argue that a former Lion, Matt Stafford, isn't that, but he was the number 1 pick who's a guy who has a cannon of an arm and one of the best pure passes we've ever seen. We might get to the point where teams that win the Super Bowl aren't quarterback-centric, and Jared Goff is the perfect player for a team like that.
Yeah, but he needs to be protected. And there's some O-line changes. I mean, is it going to be an elite O-line still? I bet not. I bet it's good, not elite. To me, what could derail them? Massive overhaul in the coaching staff. I mean, you're asking still a reasonably young head coach to deal with a massive change on both sides of the ball. We'll see how it goes,
Yeah, we will see how it goes. Hopefully it goes pretty well for them. And last but not least, if I don't include this team, somebody's going to get real, real mad at me, right? People been jumping all over us. But there's a team that actually did make strides last year, and they surprised me. And you love who they are. They know who they are, and they really have a great roster, and they have alignment from their ownership, the GM, and the coach. want you to check this out and see if these guys can duplicate what they did a year ago.
I think Emmanuel Forbes is a thing for the Rams. And just to rewind a little bit, the Rams claimed the former Commanders CB off of waivers. But what tells me the Rams are high on this dude, and I've heard that he's already taken big steps forward, is they claimed him off waivers, and the Rams are taking on the remainder of his contract. And that comes with an average annual salary of $3.85 million per season. His rookie deal goes through 2026. He has a fifth-year option for 2027. If the Rams decide to pick it up, can't compete. I just think that this team is going to get creative, and Forbes could be that guy.
Okay, now this is perplexing because as much as I love the Rams, I love their alignment. I love the strides they made last year with a very, very young team, and they know who they are. But here's my problem. They didn't get Jalen Ramsey. Pittsburgh did, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing we thought, and we have said this before on this show, we're a little bit worried about the back end. And now they're saying that they're going to depend on Forbes, the dude that was a bust in Washington, to be that. I got a little bit of trepidation with that, just a little bit, but I still got to include them as a top 17.
Yeah, they were one of my 7 too. So far, we're 5 for 5. I have a hunch the last 2 might be the same as well. I didn't love Forbes coming out of school. Partially, he's just so thin and tiny. Yeah, he's little. Yeah, but I'm almost always a fan of team number 2 grabbing a former first-round pick for nothing and just see if you can get more out of them than team number 1 did. There's minimal risk for those type of moves. So generally speaking, Elam with Dallas, okay, it's worth the risk. You might get something out of the guy. Maybe he's just a bust and he can't play. Who knows? But I'm with you. Back 7 for the Rams is still a weakness for me.
It is absolutely a weakness. We got 2 more teams left. We're going to have a lot of fun with these, man, because I think we might miss on one of these. And the only reason I say we might miss on it is not because, well, you know what? Maybe we won't, because I got one host that tells me we need to pump the brakes on one of these teams. I think the other one is obvious. And we'll discuss that and more here as we continue on Locked On NFL. All right, last 2 here on Locked On NFL, where we're going over the 7 most dependable teams, and then we're gonna have us a little dessert at the end of this one because Matt's actually been in the pastry shop cooking. He's seen the ingredients go into that last one. All right, so this is the team that I was wrong about. I was more wrong about than I was about the Rams. I thought the Rams, they had another year to go. No, they didn't. This team doesn't either, and they got a strength at a certain position. It's not even the starter. I love the starter, but I actually like the backup too. Listen to my man, Joe Marino.
The bottom line is if James Cook doesn't get the money prior to the season, boy, you should see a highly motivated version of him this year to prove to not just the Bills, but the entire league that he's worthy of top 5 money at the position, which I think also means you get a highly motivated Ray Davis, who is the second-year player that was a 4th-round pick in 2024 that had a good rookie season, that would be the guy that is in line for a jump in workload should the Bills not retain James Cook after the season.
Close your eyes and watch tape, and you'll swear up and down Ray Davis is Frank Gore. Same body, same running style, hard-nosed. I loved him at Kentucky. And now Buffalo has him. To me, he's a good fit behind James Cook. James Cook is better than people thought. He's no longer Dalvin's little brother. He's just Dalvin's younger brother. And now Buffalo looks like a team that is poised to continue their run towards trying to get a title.
Yeah, we're 6 for 6 on dependable teams so far. And this is a team that's always in it. If I had to pick one team to bet my mortgage on wins their division, it's definitely Buffalo. I mean, I think they have the easiest path to winning their division out there. It's funny. We had Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers on our show last week. And I threw this at him because I think it applies to the Bills and Packers. That we know they're good teams. If you take the quarterback out, who's the real difference maker on the roster? Who's the closer? Who's the superstar defender, the Bosa that puts teams away? Who's the Justin Jefferson that it can be on either side of the ball? Who's the superstar that keeps other coordinators up at night, quarterback aside? I don't think Buffalo has that guy, and I think that's been part of their playoff failures.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They don't have that guy on their team that can be like self-sustained. Like, for instance, so what you're saying is take the great quarterback off or the starter off and give them like a fringe starter. If you put Kirk Cousins on their team, they wouldn't even look like the same ball club.
7 or 8 win team, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Right.
And
good roster, it's not super.
Yeah, and some might say this. Well, last year against Baltimore, Buffalo adjusted and Josh was just the game manager. But you know why that's easy for him to do that? Is because they have an expectation that he can do the other thing, that he can go Lamar Jackson.
Cape on, right, yeah.
Right. So they're always guarding against that, and they're saying, okay, we're going to let you beat us the other way. And for Josh, the big challenge in that is to say, okay, I won't be Superman or Batman. I'll just be Robin today, and then still depend on the rest of your teammates to step forward.
Mahomes learned that lesson. You know, I'll death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's fine.
In fact, I used a clip from Bukowski's visit with you guys, and to what you just said, he said it, and I'll go ahead and tell you exactly what it was. He said, statistically, the last couple of years, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have run circles around Patrick Mahomes, and that's true. I saw that on your show when he said that, you and Peacock. So sometimes the stats don't tell you the reason why a guy can pull back a little bit and trust his teammates. One is because they have a very high floor. They may not have that superstar with a high ceiling, but they have a high floor. And two is because the defense is lining up for him to not be able to use his superpower. So it makes it very easy for the other thing to work. All right.
It wasn't long ago they traded for Von Miller to look for that closer. You know, we got a lead. Who's going to get me sacks in the fourth quarter? You know, and they've never, and he didn't fill that void, but they don't have another superstar besides their quarterback.
They don't. And you would think that some people think that Greg Rousseau or
good player
or Oliver that's not the dude we're talking about. We're talking about the dude can just flat out take over a game. If Michael Parsons. They don't have it. Right. Absolutely. They don't have TJ Watt.
You know, right. Yeah. I mean,
they just don't have it. And if you don't think it's important, you don't think it's important, the Rams won a Super Bowl. We talked about them earlier. If Aaron Donald doesn't make that sack, Jamar Chase is scoring a touchdown, right? And it's all over, and none of this stuff even sounds as good as it sounds right now. Last team. There's some people that tell me I need to pump the brakes. There's some people that keep reminding me of 28-3. We've seen this before from the coach. I don't know, man. I got a feeling it's a new day because of the quarterback. And the quarterback has some new interesting pieces to throw to. In fact, David Harrison with Locked On Commanders believes that they're better than probably I think they are. Listen to this.
But just from what I've seen this team looking to do with Debo, you add Terry McLaurin in the mix once his contract gets done. I mean, I don't see how this isn't one of the best duos in the NFL. In 2025, Luke McCaffrey looks like he's taking a step. If he can take that step as the number 3 or number 4 receiver, that's going to make this group even more capable and not so much more dynamic because Luke doesn't really have that big dynamic ability. If Noah Brown can escape or has escaped major injury from his OCA mandatory minicamp injury, then that's even better because you're going to bring Noah Brown in there with his experience, with his ability when he's healthy, along with McCaffrey, and you've got arguably potentially the best 4-man receiver group in the National Football.
They're going to be tempted to ride the back and the arm of Jaden Daniels. I think what they need to do, and this is just my opinion, I know you got to play to your strengths. They need to find a real dependable running game to make sure they take some of that pressure off their kid and he doesn't have to run as much as he does.
Yeah, because everyone's going to start playing them differently. Year 2 is a lot more difficult, or it's different. You just know it's going to be different. I understand the massive excitement in Washington, and it's well-deserved. But history's not kind to teams that take that big a leap from year 1 to year 2. Usually they go backwards in year 3 and then start building. I mean, and for that reason, I went with Tampa as a more reliable team. Yeah, I mean, they win their division every year.
I know it. So me and Matt, we had to wait. When I was a kid, my grandma would say, this is your plate. You can get seconds, but you have to make sure everybody eats first. Everybody's already eating first. So now me and Matt are in the kitchen looking around for what else we can get. Matt sees a little Tampa he wants. I see a little Pittsburgh that I want. So now let's discuss that. Let's talk about the pluses and minuses of Tampa. Well, I'll go because I'm a big Tampa fan. I I didn't include them here because of bias. And you know what that bias is? They've lost offensive coordinators 2 years in a row. I have been saying that the one thing about the Rams, and more important than the Rams, the 49ers, one of the things that they've been hurt from a continuity standpoint is, even though they ain't won no Super Bowl, they keep losing coaches left and right because people want to play the way that they play the game, especially on offense. Whereas you look at the Chiefs, ain't nobody trying to hire Matt Nagy, and nobody's trying to hire, of course, Steve Spagnuolo. So Andy Reid has the benefit of having really, really good assistant coaches that aren't going anywhere. So it has this continuity. Tampa doesn't have that. Yeah. And people want to fire Todd Bowles, and Baker Mayfield has been a reclamation project that has been wonderful, but something keeps pulling me back from totally buying into him the way I should. I think it probably was because I saw Sam Darnold kind of have a little bit of a rebirth too, and that's a little bit unfair. But Tampa certainly deserves to be here. I want you to take my team, though, the one you cover every day. Since y'all done got Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf and all of these players, and of course Aaron Rodgers, y'all have gone out of the box a little bit. Tell me why the Pittsburgh Steelers should probably be considered on this list.
So, real quick, I mean, Tomlin's never had a losing season. I mean, I've got a buddy that I do a radio show with that's covered the Steelers for 34 years. I think he's seen 3 losing seasons. I mean, it's crazy. They have the second most wins in the 2000s. They have the second most wins since the Super Bowl era. I mean, like, we know what this organization is. I can't imagine them bottoming out. I can't imagine them picking in the top 10. It's basically never happened in my lifetime, and I've seen 3 coaches in my lifetime. Now, I don't think they're a contender. I don't think they're as good as these teams we mentioned, but they're doing a balancing act right now of trying to be better than they were, make some noise in the playoffs, and I think Rodgers, Metcalf, Ramsey, etc. makes that more possible. And I just tweeted this right before we hit record, actually. This offseason, they have the third most cap space in the whole league going into next offseason, and they have a ton of draft picks. They have like 13 draft picks from all the comp picks and the Pickens trade. So they're trying to win now, and I'll bet everything I have when the draft is here next year in Pittsburgh, some Steeler goes to the podium and they draft a quarterback.
I totally agree with that aspect of it, and I've come around to it. Now, I watched Peacock and Williamson, and I saw you talk about – I actually used the clip. I'm going to tell you right now, I used the clip on the show. But I saw you speaking about the way that they're going to play defense and the change. So when folks ask why swap out Minka for Jalen, the example I gave is this before I let you explain it in your own words. I said, well, let's just say both of those guys are at their best and they hit their ceiling. Minka Fitzpatrick is Earl Thomas, a great single high safety.
Sure.
Jalen Ramsey is Charles Woodson. He's a safety. He's a strong safety. He's a corner. He's a press man corner. He's a zone corner. He's a slot corner. He's whatever you want him to be. So Pittsburgh traded for more versatility and more in your face with me. I got that from you, so explain it in your own words.
100%. Like, they were top of the league in single high. Tons of cover 1, tons of cover 3. Which is a wonderful thing to have when you have Minka. I mean, it's a nice luxury. You don't have to play too high because he is so good in the deep middle. But for the first time in a long time, they were not in the top of the league of sacks. And that's not going to happen around here. They need to play more press man. They need to play more cover 4, catch up with what the league's doing, more too high. And frankly, you kind of said this. I just think what Ramsey brings is harder to find than what Minka brings.
Yep. And that's why they did it, because folks were perplexed. They were like, why would you do that at this stage and pay one guy more money for 1 year and pay? Folks don't understand the big picture sometimes. There's a way that you want to play, and the way that you want to play, back end works with the front end. You said they weren't very high in sacks, but they do have, I think, one of the 2 or 3 best defensive lines, and they get a lot of pressure. The point that you were making is, pressure is null and void if you can get the ball out of your hand real quick. Well, you know what keeps you out of getting the ball? That guy releasing and stacking. And you know what?
You gotta change your coverages a little bit. You know, right.
You ain't releasing and stacking around here. You think you're just going to run past Jalen Ramsey and a big, strong Porter and a veteran like Slay. They don't have to cover very long. And I think that's what's going to be the saving grace for this trade and make the Steelers a contender, because I think it's going to change their defense. By the way, kudos to Pittsburgh. There are a lot of people that think they're stuck in the Stone Ages. They absolutely came out this offseason and did things totally different. And now I still get people complaining about that though. What are they doing? This is not Steeler football. Well, I thought y'all wanted them to do something different.
Without mortgaging the future. That's why I wanted to bring up the cap space and the draft picks. I mean, there's still a big picture plan in place here while trying to win now, which is really hard to do. Last nugget I have just on the corners and Ramsey is if they can get opposing quarterbacks to pat that football 5 times a game more, just the first read isn't there, that's 2 more sacks a game. I mean, you can't block those guys. I mean, the front is too good. The only way to beat that front is getting the ball out quick. And now they have to make people hold the ball a little bit longer.
I think they're also more explosive from a consistency standpoint. I think Rodgers gets his second pass catching tight end, which we've seen what they've done with Tanyan and Jermichael Finley and all these guys all of these years up in Green Bay. The other thing is they're going to get more first downs, because those hot reads are going to be a little bit different. The middle of the field will be challenged. So now you get more first downs on offense. You get more explosiveness out of your running backs, right? And you get more easy big plays out of DK. And now you get those 4 or 5 extra pats that you're talking about. Bro, that's the difference in 3 or 4 wins right there.
Yeah, I mean, they were at the top of the league on defense, turnovers, batted passes at the line of scrimmage, forced fumbles, all that type of stuff. But they should be the top of the league of sacks. And to me, that comes down to coverage.
It does. Speaking of coverage, Locked On NFL has you covered with scouting. Locked On NFL scouting, that is, with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Kyle Krabs is on the other side of that trade with the Dolphins, and he's done a good job explaining that. But these guys will go through these rosters, man, and they probably know all 90 players on every roster in the league, which is outstanding. They'll teach you more about your team than you can imagine, and you'll become one of the smartest fans as you head into training camp for your favorite team. Make sure you check that out on Locked On NFL as well. Of course, find Matt Williamson on the Peacock and Williamson podcast. And then me, well, I'll just be here in the barbershop. Tyler Rowland will be back Monday morning with another edition of the Madman Show early in the morning, waking you up like a double shot of espresso. Until then, y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.